everyone, I'm Ashley Weatherman and I'm going to be doing my presentation on Kiribati, or formerly known as the Sovereign Republic of Kiribati. And one of the reasons why I chose to do Kiribati is I've actually visited it, so when I saw that it was a choice or something that I was able to do a project on, it seemed like something that was interesting and something that's facing a lot of problems, and as well as it's somewhere I've been. So, and what I'm going to focus on in Kiribati is climate change, because you really can't Google anything to do with climate change without seeing something to do with Kiribati. So here we go. So here I just have a map of generally the area where Kiribati is located. It's about, give or take, 2,500 miles southwest of Hawaii, and the island chain actually expands 2,400 miles from east to west, which is roughly, I read, about the size of India, and it occupies 310 square miles of land and 1.3 million square miles of ocean. And then here I just have another map that's a little bit more closer of where Kiribati is on the map. And so the nation of Kiribati itself is divided into 3 island groups, which includes the Line Islands, the Gilbert Islands, and the Phoenix Islands. And then here are just some fun facts about Kiribati that'll be helpful as the presentation goes on. So Kiribati actually consists of 33 islands, 32 of which are atolls. The 33rd is a high-rise coral island that actually it's called, oh, I'm sorry, can't talk right now, that it actually is the tallest peak of Kiribati at 266 feet. And out of all the 33 islands, only 21 are actually inhabited by people. And then back to the fun facts here. So the population is about 103,000 people, and of those 103,000, 33% roughly are actually on the capital island of Kiribati on South Tarawa. Sorry if I'm not saying that right. And a little bit more about Kiribati is their main economic drive is actually foreign aid. And the numbers that I found for just like an idea of how much aid they receive was numbers from 2010, which estimated that Australia gave Kiribati $15 million in aid, Taiwan gave $11 million in aid, and New Zealand was $6 million, and then the World Bank contributed $4 million. Because overall, Kiribati is a fairly poor nation and rather underdeveloped compared, to the world status. So it gets most of it from aid. And then just some other fun facts is that the official languages of Kiribati are Gilbertese and English, even though that they were saying that English is really only something spoken on the capital island, and that most folks only will do maybe a mixture of Gilbertese and English, and that the natives of Kiribati are actually referred to as Kiribati. And then just for a time difference, Kiribati is a little unique in their time zone, that they were actually able to move it before the start of the millennium, and they were the first nation to welcome it, and which makes them 22 hours ahead of Honolulu. And then just a little quick history about Kiribati. The islands are were inhabited by Micronesians somewhere between 3000 BC and 1300 AD. And still to this day, the main ethnic makeup of Kiribati is of Micronesian descent. And the islands were first named after Thomas Gilbert, a British naval captain who navigated the archipelago in 1788. And Kiribati actually didn't gain their independence till 1979 from Britain. So, climate change. So as I mentioned, climate change is not something you can discuss without mentioning Kiribati or seeing it show up. And the reason for that is Kiribati is a really low-lying atolls in the Pacific that most of the islands are only 6 to 13 feet above sea level, with the highest point on Kiribati only being 266 feet. So any kind of change in sea level rise is devastating to the island. Some of the pictures I show here are just some of the effects that are happening just from what we've seen recently in the past few years. that the water is just starting to overtake everywhere where people are inhabited, and it's forcing people to move inland when there really isn't much land to start with, let alone having people move. And the consequences of that have been a lot of violence as folks try to figure out, how they're going to go about moving, as well as its damaged infrastructure and vital agriculture. So it's just for as far as the elevation goes, there's just only so much land to move away from, and it only is so high. So that's one of the major problems that they face. And then second, the next biggest concern they face besides the actual sea level rise is actually their fresh water supply. Atolls in general don't have a large water supply like we've talked about in our class here. So with their already real low level of fresh water, the sea level rise is contributing to water contamination of their drinking water. So that's becoming a rapid problem as the nation tries to figure out here how they're going to get more water when it's constantly being contaminated. And then just in general, a reason why Kiribati is just so prone to these effects is, they're a small island nation of 103,000 people that just doesn't compare to the bigger nations, so not a lot of attention is given to them, and then they don't really have the money to put into infrastructure to actually do what needs to be done to get everything to where it needs to be to fight against sea level rise. Okay, and then here I just have some more photos of sea level problems in Kiribati. Let's see. So with Kiribati being so involved with the climate change, they're also really involved in proactive politically, trying to make awareness to other nations and just on the global scale of the issues that they're facing. And Kiribati is a member of the United Nations, and they are active on the Framework Convention on Climate Change. And in some of the recent things that they've been trying to do, in 2009 they attended a vulnerable forum in the Maldives, which what came from that was it was decided that a bunch of island nation leaders came and they discussed that to do their part to eliminate the rapid changing of climate change, they were going to be carbon neutral in their economies and try to just be more green, setting an example on the world scale. And then in 2010, Kiribati hosted the Climate Change Conference, and their current president right now, his last name's Tong, President Tong, he is real proactive and constantly trying to make aware on the political scale and, trying to meet with world leaders, trying to make it so they're aware that what we do in these Western nations contributes to the rapid climate change and how just deeply it affects us, small island nation, and even though there isn't a ton of people on it, that it's affecting their lives rapidly, and that there will be nowhere to go, which is one of the other big problems that Kiribati faces, is that their atolls, all of them don't go up that high, so once the sea level starts, it's going to be rapid and there's going to be nowhere to go. Okay, and then moving on to the next slide. So what's being done? That's one of the biggest things that Kiribati is currently, working towards, is what they can do. And recently, the recent president, President Tong of Kiribati, has made a $9 million, I believe $9 million purchase of 6,000 acres of land purchased in Fiji. And the idea behind it is having somewhere for all the people of Kiribati, all the natives, to have somewhere to go once sea level rise starts to happen. It's kind of like a plan B. And the president does always stress that it is a plan B and that he never hopes it to be the first, but he doesn't believe that the situation is going to get any better and wants this as a reserve for folks to go to in the event that it does happen. And the plan with having the land in Fiji is to slowly move people, not just move all 103,000 at once. They first want to establish a good presence by sending agriculture workers over to get it established and get started and make a good presence as immigrants in Fiji. And so that was a big purchase and his biggest move towards what's going to happen next in response to the climate change. Some other ideas that are floating around, literally, is they're considering floating islands, some way to help the island actually stay afloat in the event that it does start to be overtaken by sea level rise. Another thing to discuss is man-made islands, kind of like with oil rigs, to make some man-made ones for people to live on. And just an interesting thing that came from some of the posts I made was climate refugees. There was actually a 37-year-old native man from Kiribati that was trying to be a climate refugee in New Zealand. And there was a long story with that, but what ended up happening is he was rejected and wasn't accepted as a refugee, but he was the first person to ever try to claim being a refugee in a country because of the climate. And his argument was that his village was destroyed, his agriculture destroyed, and that there was nothing left in Kiribati, and that New Zealand would be giving him a death sentence if sent back. But again, I think it's still maybe in the court systems, but it was ruled that he couldn't be a refugee. And then something else that Kiribati is trying to do is they have an adaptation program that's working with what they can do. So it's improving water supply management, coastal management protection by replanting mangroves and protection of infrastructure. So that's what they're trying to do. And this here is kind of the other side of this whole argument with Kiribati being overtaken by climate change. To the left is the current president, President Tong. To the right is the former president of Kiribati. And what was interesting, this was from another post I did on the discussion board, is the former president actually doesn't think that the sea level rise is a concern. That he thinks that the current President Tong now, is doing it strictly as a propaganda move, because since their country runs on aid, it's a tactic to get more money. And that the former President Tito says that the way the coral, it'll rebuild itself quick enough to stay up with the climate change and the sea level rise, and that it won't be a problem and that people don't need to move. And he saw the whole purchase in Fiji as a complete waste of money and unnecessary because the people won't need to move. And what was interesting is actually what Professor Davis gave me to look at. It was a study done by author Webb in 2010 that actually was a 19 to 61 year study of 27 atolls in the Pacific. And over that time period, with a 2 millimeter rise per year of sea level, 86% stayed stable, while only 14% started to actually diminish, which kind of in a sense favors what the former president is saying, that it should be able to keep up. As long as it stays at that constant level, that it shouldn't be an issue in the future. So that was kind of an interesting counterbalance to the whole climate change issue, is that there's a former president who doesn't think it is the highest concern of the nation right now. So just in conclusion, climate change is a big issue in Kiribati. It's one of the biggest ones. They face a lot of problems with overpopulation, with the majority of population only being on the one capital island of South Tarawa. But climate change is the one that you hear the most of, because as sea level rises and things change, it's only going to get worse. And it'll be, interesting in a sad sense to see, who's right, if it will be an issue or if it'll be fine. But that concludes my presentation on Kiribati, and good luck the rest of the week, everybody, and thank you.